Hi, this is Pat Johnson, your psychology instructor, and in this mini lecture, we're going to start talking about psychological disorders, discussing what is a psychological disorder, and looking at how the biopsychosocial approach helps us understand psychological disorders a little bit better. Our author tells us that a psychological disorder is a syndrome marked by a clinically significant disturbance in an individual's cognitions, emotion regulation, or behavior. That part that's in the quotation marks comes from the American Psychiatric Association and a book called the DSM that we'll talk about in the next video lecture. Now, a psychological disorder could affect somebody's cognitions, meaning the way they think. It could affect their emotion regulation, in other words, their ability to control their own emotions, or it could cause them to behave, to act in ways that they would not normally do. Now, what do we mean by clinically significant? Clinically significant means it's interfering with the person's life. So I have some pictures here. Let's take a look at them. In this picture, you see a bridge. It's actually a local bridge here in eastern North Carolina. The Neuse River Bridge is a huge structure. If a person had a phobia of crossing bridges and had a job offer on the other side of the bridge and wouldn't take that job because they couldn't bear thinking of crossing that bridge each day to get to work, that would be interfering with the person's life, and that would be clinically significant. In this picture, we see somebody who's just come back from a shopping spree. Sometimes we see compulsive spending behavior in some mental illnesses. If it caused a person economic harm, in other words, they spent way too much money, more than they should have, then that would be clinically significant. It would be interfering with the person's life. In this picture, you see somebody drinking, and as we all know, alcoholism can be very disruptive to a person's life, to their relationships, to their job, to their economic well-being. In this picture here, we see somebody in a corner. I chose this one because the person looks really depressed, and obviously depression can interfere with people's lives. We use the biopsychosocial approach to understand psychological disorders. So let's go back to that last picture in the last screen, depression. There are obviously biological aspects to depression. Somebody could have a neurotransmitter imbalance in their brain. Psychologically speaking, in other words, the person's thoughts and feelings could be contributing to their depression. If a person thought real negative thoughts about themselves, such as, "I'm no good, I'll never be able to do anything right," that could contribute to their depression. Last of all, we need to consider the social aspect, in other words, environmental influences, and how that could affect somebody's depression. For example, let's suppose the person just had somebody in their life die who was very important to them. That could certainly contribute to depression. Maybe there was a loss of a relationship. There could have been a job loss. All of those are environmental factors that could contribute to depression. I'm just using depression as one example. We could use the biopsychosocial approach to any mental illness, any psychological disorder. There are bio, psycho, and social aspects to every mental illness.